everyone, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be sharing two cards with you. Both of them feature the same technique, masking with freezer paper. So I want to thank Andrea from Andrea's Paper Antics for giving me this idea. She left it in one of my YouTube comments, so I will leave her blog link down below. Be sure to head over and check it out. But today, for this technique, you are going to need freezer paper. It's plastic coated freezer paper, so it's plastic coated on one side, and then on the other side, you have just a really nice smooth paper-like surface. Now this comes in a huge roll, so you get a lot of use out of it. I've actually started using it to wrap my husband's lunch sandwiches in it, and it works out really well for that, just to try and use up all of this. So I'm going to cut off a piece here, and then I actually trim this piece down in my paper trimmer to slightly larger, about 1/8 of an inch on all sides, bigger than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it's going to fit over my card panel that I'm working on. And then I'm going to die cut an oval out of the center. This die cuts really well. It's nice and thin, the plastic coating doesn't get in the way, and it die cuts nicely. I'm using an oval from the Waffle Flowers Nesting Ovals die set, and then it's time to iron on these masks. So I am ironing onto watercolor paper. You can use any kind of paper, whatever's suitable for your project, but I really wanted to put this masking technique through the ringer and try it with watercolor and some ink blending as well. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this down, both the oval to one sheet of cardstock, or watercolor paper, excuse me, and I'm using my iron to do that. Now my iron is on a lower setting. It's about at a 3 out of 10, I think. I didn't want to go too hot and end up scorching the paper. And remember, you can always go hotter, but once you scorch that paper or burn it, you can't go back. So start lower. If you need to crank it up, you can. And you can always just continue to add more heat until you get this to stick down. You just want to make sure that this is secured to the paper, and especially those edges you want really secure. So once I had the oval done, I'm going to go ahead and take another piece of watercolor paper and use the outside piece of it and go ahead and secure that down to, again, just ironing over it back and forth until it's nice and secure. And I'm just making sure that those edges especially are really, really melted down to the paper. Now this will come off, I promise. So go ahead and just give it a really good press and make sure that it's stuck on there. Whenever you do this, you do want to make sure you're doing it on a heat-safe surface. I am using some canvas under, or like a canvas board under me. However, you can use a towel, you can use a glass mat, you can put an ironing board down or take it to your ironing board. Just make sure that you're not ruining your work surface as you add heat to it. All right, now I'm going to start on this piece where it's just the die cut, the oval is out of there. And I'm going to work in that oval area. And for that, I'm going to just do a bit of watercoloring very, very quickly. I'm smooshing down some distress inks on just a stencil blank. Essentially, a stencil blank is just a piece of plastic. So that is what I am using. I used Faded Jeans, that very dark blue, some peacock feathers, and then Ripe Persimmon is this nice bright orange, red, corally color. It's really pretty. And I also sprayed my paper with a bit of water. Now I'm just going to let that sit for a minute and kind of absorb into the fibers of the paper so this color spreads a little bit better and it doesn't just plop down and stay there. Now for this, I had no plan. I just wanted to see if it would work, to be honest. So I am using my water brush and just doing stripes of color here. I started with Faded Jeans, and then I'm going to blend into that Ripe Persimmon, and then finally I'll go in and do some peacock feathers down at the bottom. Now, you might want to choose a better color combination. This ended up working out really well, but to be honest, this was just kind of a play time for me, but it ended up working out really well, so I did turn this into a card at the end of it all. All right, now once I had this completely filled in with color, I set it aside to dry. You want it to dry a little bit so that you're not pulling up wet paper essentially. And then once it's pretty dry, you can go ahead and start peeling. I like to peel from the inside, not from the corners, so it doesn't rip. and then it just peels right off, and you have this beautiful masked area. I mean, it did such a crisp job. I wasn't expecting it. The plastic coating really kept that watercolor out. So let's give it a try with the distressings and blending. Now, I chose the roughest blending method I could think of, and that is the mini ink blending tools. They're not rough per se, but you give them some pressure on this, and a lot of times when I'm masking and using these with my masks, it will pull it right up just because it gets caught on those sponges when I'm applying pressure and whatnot. So I thought I will really give it a go with this. I am using cracked pistachio directly around the oval, and then on the corners I'm bringing in a little bit of dried marigold just to add a little bit of that orangey color. Again, this was just a playtime for me. I like the way this color combination turned out, but again, use whatever color combination you like. I just really wanted to give this technique a try and really, really, really try it out and make sure it worked well. And of course, I wanted to see if this would also hold up to a bit of water. So I grab my spray bottle and I'm going to take out the nozzle and just use the end of that nozzle to start flicking on water droplets. Now this is going to give a bleach effect in those distressing areas, but also the masking paper or freezer paper did also get a little wet with this. And this I didn't give really any time to dry other than about 30 seconds for that water to sit and bleach out the distress inks. Then I just mopped it up with this towel underneath my project. It's a microfiber towel. And then it's time to peel up the mask. Now, if I was doing this with normal masking paper or computer paper, wherever that distress ink was and the water hit it, it would seep underneath and it would leave a nice little ring on your project. But with this, that plastic coating doesn't let it get through. It works so well and created this nice crisp line, even with the texture of the watercolor paper. And I did that on the textured side just to see if it would seep through. And it didn't seep through on the watercolor either, which I was really surprised about. That plastic just melted into those little crevices and created such crisp lines. It worked out really well. Now, I wasn't expecting to turn these into cards. Again, these were just kind of practice pieces, but I love the way they turned out so much. I'm going to go ahead and make some cards with them. On this first one, I am going to use this silhouette stamp from Cracker Box and Susie Stamps called Moonlight Fairy, and then Look for Rainbows, this sentiment. I thought it kind of fit perfectly with this image that I'm using. And I wasn't sure if I would use these silhouette stamps as much as I do. Um, I've never like gravitated towards them when I'm buying things, but I love silhouette stamps. They are perfect for all those background techniques you want to try, and then you're not quite sure what to do with the products that you've created. Silhouette stamps are awesome for that, and this is just one of those examples. I just went ahead and put that little fairy kind of hanging off the edge, and then also I positioned that sentiment where it's hanging off the left side as well. And then I'm stamping them down with some VersaFine Clair and Nocturne. Now, because of the texture, it is not going to be a solid image. So what I did was I stamped it about 2 times, and then apart from that, I was like, all right, it's not going to get any better unless I really give this pressure and almost break my Misty lid. And I wasn't willing to do that. So I just took a black marker. You can use any one you have on hand. I'm using my Blick Studio brush marker, but by all means, you could use a Sharpie, whatever you have on hand, just a black marker, and just start touching up those little areas. And this is going to be the best way to fill those in. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where it's not going to fill in anymore, and you're going to have to do it unless you want a spotty image. So just take a marker and fill it in. It's relatively easy. And because VersaFine Clair Nocturne is so black, you can't even tell I filled it in at all. And there's a look at that sentiment. I love this one. It's a gorgeous one and perfect for this card. One final look at this card. All I did was mount that panel onto an A2 top folding card base, and then I moved on to the next card. So for this next one, I went ahead and grabbed the Thanks Big stamp from Cracker Box and Susie Stamps. This is another one that I love and I use quite often. because it's just big enough to be the focal point of your card. So again, really great for those background techniques where you're not quite sure what to put on top of them. A lot of times I'll just grab this larger sentiment and stamp it on top and my card is good to go. Plus, I'm always in need of thanks cards, so it works out really well. For this, I use the Morning Mist stamp or ink from VersaFine Claire. Now, grays are a little bit tricky, so what I did was I just grabbed a marker as close as I could in the gray color and filled in just those little dots, just touched them up, and it turned out pretty well. Not as good as the black, but if you didn't know I did it, you probably couldn't tell. But on this textured surface with the solid stamps, it's going to be super hard to get it to completely fill in without going in with a marker. And there it is. All I did with that one was pop it onto a card base as well that's A2 in size. And that finished both cards. This is a great technique, and I hope you give it a try. And thank you to Andrea for telling me about it. That's going to do it for me today. All the supplies I used are going to be listed down in the description box. Thanks for watching, everyone, and happy crafting!